So in American sports, we usually typically hear about like 5 teams in each of the big major ones, especially the NBA, that are like currently tanking. And for those of you who don't know what tanking means, it generally means that a team is deliberately trying to get bad so they can have a good pick. Again, the NBA is really guilty of this every year, with 5 teams really trying to tank and be bad just so they can have an opportunity at being pick number 1. But of course, in the AFL, this never really happens at all. Again, if teams are bad, it's because usually they're just absolutely dog water, and it's not really by design. But again, in saying that, I feel like one team recently, which just so happens to be the team I go for on the Richmond Football Club, might have genuinely just become one of the first AFL teams to look like they are deliberately tanking, look like they are potentially deliberately trying to be bad in season 2025, just so they can have a really, really good pick, most likely pick number 1. Now, before I do get into what I mean by that and more, there's still a decent amount of you guys who watch these videos who are not yet subscribed to the channel. So if you could do me a massive favor and leave a like on this video, which lets me know you guys are enjoying them, and subscribe to the channel for all latest sports content and news. And I guess without further ado, we'll get into a lot of reasons on why I think the Richmond Football Club are not only potentially deliberately trying to be bad, is probably the right word, but also might be one of the first teams in AFL that look like they are actually tanking. Again, there are a lot of reasons for this. Again, Richmond, they finished off 2024 being the worst team in the game. Again, were they the worst team in the game? It's very hard to say, considering they had like the most injuries a team has seen in a very long time. But in saying that the Tigers had all of those injuries, they kind of realized that the list wasn't going anywhere at all, and that internal decisions probably had to be made. Again, with all that being said, Richmond got semi-lucky with some of their best players actually opting to explore their options and request trades to other teams. These, of course, being Daniel Rioli, who met up with former coach Damien Hardwick on Gold Coast and then would go on a request to trade there. Shea Bolton, who is from WA and arguably Richmond's best, of course, requesting a trade to a WA team and getting shipped to Fremantle. And Baker, of course, exploring his options in WA as well and heading to West Coast. Again, they also had Jack Graham leaving free agency. But end of the day, what is interesting about these 4 players leaving the Tigers is how much like little Richmond did to try and stop them from doing it. Again, it's very rare to see a team have like 3 decent players leave their squad. But of course, when that does happen, the AFL teams absolutely go ball to the wall to try and ensure that these guys stay. And at times, they often get their wish. Again, for example, we saw Josh Dunkley get his trade request denied at the Western Bulldogs like 2 times in a row. They actively wanted to keep him there, and they didn't want to see their team get any worse by losing one of their better players. While the Richmond Football Club, they didn't deny anyone. They didn't say, look, Shea, we're already losing Rioli, we're losing Baker and Graham now. You have to stay a Tiger because we don't want to be absolutely dirt poor of talent next year, and we at least want to be semi-competitive. No, they legitimately just said, we'll trade you, we'll trade you, we'll trade you, we'll trade you, in knowing that that is going to make them most likely a very bad team. Again, not only are all of those things the case, but even little things like Noah Bolter just being banned by the Richmond Football Club for a whopping 4 games due to an off-field incident. Again, this doesn't usually happen to teams that are trying to actually be good. Again, Clayton Oliver, we have heard all of the off-field incidents that have happened with Clayton Oliver. Again, there is a lot more to that story that I've, personally heard just from people that I know. And again, I think a lot of people have heard that what Clayton Oliver has done off-field should have probably warranted him to be potentially banned. And I don't even think he was even banned by the Melbourne Football Club for any games. He also spattered at training, all these type of things. nothing came out of really many of those incidents. Yeah, Noah Balter, he gets into a fight, in the off-season. We don't even know really what's going on with that. And he gets banned for 4 games. Again, a really good comparison to that would have been even Marlon Pickett, who is literally in so many legal issues at the moment for rumors and accusations of him stealing stuff. And he didn't even get banned by the Richmond Football Club for any games, right? The Tigers deliberately banning one of their better players for 4 games is a weird look, to say the least, considering all the other players they have let off, considering all the other teams that have let their players off. It's a weird look, I'm not going to lie. And then you've got, I think, one of the more important stats on why Richmond could be potentially deliberately trying to be bad and deliberately tanking, as some might call it, is we know that Tasmania are coming into the AFL in a couple of years, right? The Tasmania Football Club are coming into the AFL in a couple of years, and let's just say they come in 2028. That means the 2027, 2028 draft will be completely dominated by Tasmania, and they'll probably get a lot of, nice incentives for the 2029 draft as well. Again, teams who have to draft in these years of new teams, like when Gold Coast and GWS were becoming a thing, typically struggled much longer in their rebuilds. Again, the Melbourne Football Club being a good example. They typically had to draft high in 11 and 12 and just weren't able to, which reflected on them really badly in 2013 and 2014. Again, the teams who drafted, big picks before Gold Coast and GWS came in happened to be the Richmond Football Club, Hawthorn Football Club, West Coast Football Club, and we know those 3 teams, I think, won 7 premierships, or technically 8 premierships combined if you're counting Hawthorn's 2008 one. So, I think Richmond have really realised this and have seen that strategy of getting picks before Tasmania come in, and then the 20th team comes in, really, really works, and it's extremely beneficial for you to do if you actually want to be a successful team in the future. So Richmond perfectly timed this by trading away all their veteran and good players just so they could have really good picks in years before Tasmania come in and years before the 20th AFL team comes in. So technically, really, really smart by Richmond on that, front. It also looks like because they drafted 8 players in last year's draft, they will be going full steam ahead into 2025 and debuting what I think will be most of them. I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Smiley debuts round 1, Sam Lawler debuts round 1, one of the key forwards debut round 1, and then as the season goes on, we'll start to see all the other guys, debut. That means that in you debuting players and 18 and 19 year olds, you're basically asking for your games to not be very competitive, and you're essentially not going to be exactly that great. So Richmond are doing that, and it makes sense, because if they didn't do it and they drafted when those other teams come into the league, they would be in as much trouble as what Melbourne were for so many of those years, and what other teams have unfortunately been, like even, Essendon, who really haven't been able to get top 4 picks for a very, very long time. The Tigers are doing this now. They're not only going to debut a lot of players this year from their 8 drafted players, but they should probably have 2 top 5 picks in next year's draft with their own pick, which looks like they're deliberately trying to get pick 1 of, and of course North Melbourne's pick, which should be potentially for them a top 5 pick. So are Richmond potentially tanking? Well, I almost think sort of, because they are deliberately trying to be bad just so they can get picks before Tasmania and the 20th team comes in, because they know when they did this last time, it very much worked and helped them get 3 AFL flags. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for all the latest AFL content and news. Do you guys think Richmond are potentially becoming one of the first teams to deliberately tank in the AFL? Again, I'd very much like to know. Subscribe to my gaming channels and my IRL/long channels. Links for them will be in the description down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.